Welcome to For Your Amusement, a theme park podcast that aims to exhaustively evaluate the world's most popular theme park attractions. I'm Ryan Bergara.
I'm Byron Marin.
And for this episode's featured attraction, we hitch a ride with Evac and totally pwn Megatron to discuss Transformers the Ride in Universal Studios Hollywood, Beijing, Singapore, and Universal Orlando. Look, I'm going to get this out of the way up top. I used to really like this ride. I do not enjoy this ride very much anymore. I don't think it's a bad attraction. I just don't enjoy it. That may come through. And this might be the first instance of us covering a ride on this show in which I, in particular, do not enjoy it. I don't know where you stand on this, Byron, but...
I guess we'll find out.
I guess we will
over the
find
course
out.
of this episode.
Either way, before we get into any of that anyways, let's get into some history, Byron, and let's just lead this bad boy off.
1984, the Transformers franchise begins with a popular toy line produced by Hasbro and a Japanese toy company by the name of Takara Tomy, which features mecha or giant robot toys essentially from Takara that are rebranded for Western markets. The success of Transformers toy line spawns multiple TV series, which are based on the massive robot characters in addition to comic books, and then it ultimately leads to a film series.
You wanted this, right? You wanted the real deal? That's what this is. Wake up. You're in the middle of it. You want to run? Go ahead. No one's stopping you. Stop complaining.
And also, by the way, there's a shout out to Beast Wars, by the way. Like, I don't remember a whole lot from it, but as a kid, I remember Beast Wars at least looking pretty cool.
Was that a Transformers
It was like
series?
it was a TV series, like a spin-off of Transformers, except they were like based off animals as opposed to cars. Or
I
something
had
of that
no
nature.
relation at all to the Transformers franchise before Steven Spielberg and the LaBoofster.
Oh wow, yeah. The
entered
only
scene.
exposure I had to it was Beast Wars because my brother was like really into it at the time. I didn't follow the stories that much, but I remember like stumbling upon the TV once in a while. My brother was watching Beast Wars, and I remember like them transforming into animals and stuff. It looked pretty cool.
That's fucking stupid.
I think Beast Wars is what they implemented in the latest Transformers movie, right?
It just came out instinctually. You were talking about they transform into animals, and under my breath went, that's fucking stupid. It is. Why?
Look, maybe I'm not describing it well, but
the thing
at
is,
least for kids, it was cool.
This is why I have an issue with the new Transformers movie, The Rise of the Beasts. Isn't the whole point that they transform into like mechanical items like a car or, you know, like a fucking radio? Why are they transforming into animals?
I don't know. They're like robotic animals, though. It's like it's hard to like. Once again, like I'm not
Goofy.
Like maybe like look it up or something. Like I only saw this as like a very young kid.
Do you like this franchise? The movies?
Oh gosh, we are gonna get in the history of this franchise.
Okay, fair
very
enough.
quickly.
We'll continue. We'll get into that later.
Fast forward to early 2000s, producer Don Murphy is developing a film series adaptation of the G.I. Joe toy franchise. However, due to the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, Hasbro suggests that Murphy maybe instead toy with the idea of bringing the Transformers to the silver screen instead. Steven Spielberg, who was a fan of the comics and toys, jumps on as an executive producer and asks Michael Bay to direct on July 30th, 2005.
It started with a phone call from Steven Spielberg saying a movie called Transformers, it's about a boy who finds a car that's an alien robot. From there, it starts as a sweet movie, right?
The first Transformers film, which was distributed by Paramount, came out in 2007, and it's a big hit, grossing over $700 million worldwide, spawning a massive multi-billion-dollar film franchise that is still kicking today somehow.
Made Shia LaBeouf into a movie star.
Incredible.
That's you could also see versions of that in Honey
Do
Boy.
it!
Honey Boy.
Just do it!
There's portions of him filming that movie. I liked these films when they came out. I thought the first one was quite good. I thought everything else after that was a bit much. Just much like any major franchise.
I mean, I was the first time I saw this film was like as a kid or basically like maybe an early teenager.
Yeah.
And even then I kind of thought the story was pretty flat. Like I wasn't really
You didn't like the first
engrossed.
one?
I thought it was like fun. Like I thought it was cool. I think it was visually and like the sound design and all that stuff. Like of course like, you know, Bayhem basically of Michael Bay's style of filmmaking was really cool for these action sequences, but I just didn't really feel fulfilled.
Lots of slow motion shots of Megan Fox in this film.
Yeah, a lot of like scrubbing the front hood of a car. That's all I remember that. Once again, I guess I was like an early like teen, so that was like
Very critical for the structure
very
of the film, the character development.
early exposure to like that type of material that was like bumping during that era. But anyways, back in 2007, after the success of the first film, planning immediately begins on bringing a Transformers attraction to life. This includes the involvement of Steven Spielberg and Michael Bay.
Hell yeah.
Now, and in October of 2008, a Transformers ride was announced by Universal Parks and Resorts. However, the first iteration of this ride was not coming to the States because at the time, Universal Studios Singapore was under construction and could use a ride center around a global phenomenon like Transformers. However, the ride was not ready for Singapore's May 28, 2011 grand opening for the whole park, but Transformers the Ride 3D would open 6 months after the opening of the park.
I'm glad they held it till it was ready. It's the worst when they open up a park before everything is ready. Or even like a land. You saw this with Toontown in Disneyland. They opened up the land before Mickey and Minnie was even ready.
Well, yeah, they opened up Galaxy's Edge before opening
Of Rise of the Resistance. It feels like it's...
I'm not a big fan of Phase 2s. I feel like that was like something they didn't do until the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And it was like, instead they're just like, hey, like we'd rather open it than not. Like I think it's just kind of like cheap. It's like you don't make your deadline like wait till the next. Like I get it, they're trying to make more money, but just phased openings. It's like it's just so obvious that like an apparent that they're not meeting their deadlines, and I think it's just a poor representation, especially when it's like a land that clearly doesn't have
it's
an
e-ticket attraction. Yeah, exactly. It's weird.
I think it's just cheap.
Does Steven Spielberg have more rides in theme parks than any other filmmaker in history? Jurassic Park, Jurassic World.
I mean, if I was a betting guy, then
E.T.,
yes.
which is no longer here, but
but it's still in Orlando.
Oh yeah,
World-class attraction.
That's right.
According to us and Jenny.
And then we have Transformers, and then we have Indiana Jones Adventure, and then he had nothing to do with Star.
Now he wasn't really a creative consultant with Indiana Jones,
but it's
Adventure,
based on
though.
his IP.
It was Lucas.
It's based on his IP though.
It is based on I mean, he came on to direct Indiana Jones, but I mean, it's really like George Lucas's like project.
I think those movies. Anyways, let's continue.
So Transformers the Ride 3D would open 6 months after the opening of Universal's new park in Singapore, officially on December 3rd, 2011, although there were technical rehearsals, as Universal likes to do, open to the public in November of that year. Just to reiterate, this is the Singapore
version. It was
which is the original version of Transformers the Ride, which I actually didn't know until researching this podcast.
I remember that because I was very excited for this ride because, like I said, I liked the IP at the time. I thought they were fun movies, so I thought this would make a cool ride.
I didn't know this ride existed until I went to Universal with you, because I wasn't following the development of Universal attractions like I was with Disneyland or roller coasters.
Well, I
at
got
the time.
you to come to Universal because of this ride, if you recall. Like I loved the ride so much, I was like, you got to get on this ride, and I convinced you to get an annual pass. And
incredible. That was also during the time where it's like if you bought a ticket, it was almost like you were losing money if you didn't get an annual pass.
It was buy
really,
one get a year free.
Yeah, Disney definitely doesn't do the same. It doesn't have the same ticket method, especially today.
No, they do not.
You have to go like 10 plus times now, I think, to get the value of your pass now at Disney. Anyways, the ride in Singapore would inherit the simulator motion ride system that debuted with The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man at Islands of Adventure in 1999. Meanwhile, in 2010, back in the States, Universal Studios Hollywood removed 2 lower lot attractions, being Backdraft and the special effects stages, to make room for a Transformers ride of their own.
F in the chat for Backdraft.
Pour one out.
It was a good attraction. However, I do think this was a worthy sacrifice and necessary, unlike my thoughts on Back to the Future and E.T. But yeah, I liked Backdraft. It was fun. I liked seeing Ron Howard talk about fire.
Hi, I'm Ron Howard. What is a backdraft? Well, the technical explanation is a fire.
Probably another attraction where like the show is more popular than the actual IP. Like who actually watches Backdraft nowadays?
I think people watched it back in the day.
Maybe. Like I mean, I never heard of Backdraft until I went on to the attraction, which was actually in Japan, which I think is still running.
Oh,
I don't know.
Fuck yeah.
When I went, I don't want to like. For all I know, they took it out. But when I went in 2019 to Japan, that was the first time I experienced Backdraft.
Oh, dude,
and learned a bunch about the movie. It was
fire, the dance of fire.
It's right. Yeah, Ron Howard's in the pre-shows and everything. It's wild. To make room for Transformers in Hollywood, they get rid of the special effects stages and backdraft, and after 2 years of construction, Transformers The Ride 3D opens at Universal Studios Hollywood on May 24th, 2012. The initial success of the Hollywood iteration, as a matter of fact days later, leads to the immediate work on a version for Universal Studios Florida. Soundstage 44 was demolished in June of 2012, and on June 20th, 2013, Universal Studios Florida gets their own Transformers ride. And these are all like pretty much direct clones of each other, by the way.
Makes sense.
Fast forward to September 20th, 2021, Universal Studios Beijing gets its grand opening, and with the opening of the entire park, in the Transformers Metro Base Land was their own version of the ride.
There's
entitled,
a Transformers land in Beijing?
Yeah, supposedly it's called Transformers Metro Base. As a matter of fact, there's a Waterworld area, like a Waterworld land that has the Waterworld show.
Jesus Christ, I gotta go to Beijing.
In Beijing. And this Transformers Metro Base land, in addition to the Transformers ride that we're covering today, has a clone of the track layout that is the Incredible Hulk coaster at Islands of Adventure, except it's called the Decepticoaster.
Oh shit.
Which is the same layout of the Incredible Hulk, except it's in a Transformers land.
Do you get to ride on the back of Megatron like Pete's Dragon or something?
I think you just get to get on a roller coaster that looks Transformers-like.
I want to ride Megatron. You could probably rephrase that.
Yeah, right. I was gonna.
Could have said that better.
Except this version in Beijing has a different name. It's actually called Transformers Battle of the AllSpark.
Cool. It is the Battle of the AllSpark.
Which means that the only operating Universal resort without this ride is Japan, which is wildly ironic considering that Transformers is based on a Japanese toy line.
Holy shit, I never really thought about that. I think maybe they're transformered out. Like if we think we have Transformers fatigue over here in the States, this shit has been around for decades in Japan.
And then I guess in addition to that, Transformers is basically like what Hasbro did with the Japanese toy company to basically create a like Western spin-off. So maybe in Japan they're like, no, like we got our own like original stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like what the American Society did to Godzilla.
Yeah.
They turned it into some kind of goofy thing when in fact it was a tragic metaphor for the Hiroshima bomb.
Oh gosh. Yeah, no, it's amazing how like actually well layered like the inspiration for Godzilla, which by the way, like we recently saw Godzilla -1. It's like, like the Japanese know how to make a Godzilla movie. It is like poetic. It is fucking beautiful. It's like a legitimate war movie.
How's there not been a Godzilla attraction at this point? I feel like that would kick ass. Like a Godzilla like land.
Universal Japan. That
gotta get on that. You gotta get on that. I want to see people get disintegrated by his heat ray. Anyways,
yeah.
Let's move forward here.
That leads us into all four of these rides, all the four of these clones essentially of Transformers are still kicking today. The Hollywood version has an all-time average wait time of 30 minutes with a longest recorded wait time of 200 minutes. That was on July 24th of 2019.
200 minutes. Huh.
In 2019, that's very interesting, by the way.
200 minutes for this ride.
Oh, God, yeah. And I'm sure we'll get to the queue later, but
I'd be begging for Megatron to kill me.
The Orlando version has an all-time average wait time of 30 minutes as well. Its longest recorded wait time is 195 minutes, July 10th, this was recorded, of 2020. Singapore, all-time average wait time, 12 minutes. I don't have a highest recorded wait time for this, but 12 minutes is their all-time average wait time. And then Beijing, which is a more recent park opening in 2021, has a slightly higher average wait time because, of course, it's new, at 32 minutes. So all of these average wait times are actually, especially considering like weekdays and down days, like really brings it down. The highest one is only 32 minutes.
Yeah, it's not that bad. I mean, the average, I just can't imagine waiting 3 hours for this fucking ride. I wouldn't be able to live with myself. I couldn't even imagine it. That being said, the queue is spectacular, at least in Hollywood.
You like the queue?
I like the queue. I think the queue's well done for what it is. Like they didn't have to go as hard as they did.
You gonna bring it up in the good here?
Maybe. I might bring it up in the good and the bad later in the episode.
I think the good and the bad's coming right up, right?
But
after some fun facts. Here's a fun fact for you. You ever notice, or don't I guess, that theme parks feel safe but you never see any security? That's because there's a ton of undercover security guards. See, they want you to feel safe but not worry about the threat of danger. And nobody does that better than today's sponsor, NordVPN. We hear more and more about cyber attacks and cybercrime becoming more commonplace, and it can be scary if this isn't your field of expertise. NordVPN gives you great peace of mind because with one click, you are protected. NordVPN protects your private data like bank details, passwords, and online identity from falling into the wrong hands. Also, with NordVPN's threat protection feature, you are also protected from viruses, malicious malware, and phishing sites. And once you're safe, there are plenty of other juicy benefits to being in the Nord family. With NordVPN, you can switch your device's virtual location with one click. This means you can avoid price discrimination, check if the same product is cheaper in another region. This is especially useful when you are booking flights, hotels, rental cars, etc. You could also use it for watching sports events, TV shows, and films that aren't available in your region by switching your virtual location to a country which is showing the event. For example, if you're on holiday, you can switch your virtual location back to your home country and access all the streaming services which would usually be geo-blocked. You can't put a price on peace of mind, but even if you could, you're getting a great deal with NordVPN, and we want to make it an even better one. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/FYA. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and you'll help support our podcast. The link is in the podcast episode description box. Now back to the show.
It is time for some fun facts. The ride length is 4 minutes and 30 seconds with a perceived top speed of 60 miles per hour and a ride vehicle that spins a full 360 degrees. I actually don't know how fast these ride vehicles go. I could not find that information, but I could find the perceived speed because there are portions of this ride where I think there's a part where Optimus goes, Autobots roll out, and then they fucking...
Autobots roll out! I got Megatron!
Yeah, there is a perceived speed, which is impressive, but obviously I think they advertise the perceived speed because the actual speed is like maybe 10 miles an hour at most.
I can't imagine it's 10.
It's got to be super.
It's got to be a little less than that. But the vehicle does spin a full 360 degrees. That's cool. One of the Universal creatives described making this ride as the vehicle is a camera lens and we get to point it wherever we want people to see. That being said, there is a 270-degree view that you could see from this ride vehicle, so they did have to plan for almost essentially 360 degrees of view, which is very unlike a film, especially when you're coming to something that requires digital effects like this. The ride sports a capacity of 1,250 riders per hour and a reported cost of $100 million, but one news report that I saw listed it at $40 million. There's no way. With all they had to, this is all CG. Every part of the city was CG. There's no practical shooting.
I could buy either of those prices, honestly.
Really?
Because think about it. So much of the development costs
was for Spider-Man.
Probably for Spider-Man.
I'm skeptical of pricing when it comes to this one. I just know they spent a lot. It's a 60,000 square foot 2-story show building with a total of 2,000 feet of track and 14 custom built film screens that are an enormous 60 feet tall. This was used to great effect to show off the scale of the big guy, aka Optimus Prime.
That's incredible. I didn't know the track length was that long.
Well, that's 2,000. Yeah, it's a big ass show building. Yeah. I remember when they were building this, and I was following the construction updates, just seeing how big the building it was itself. And you could still see the building because they just put basically like cardboard cutouts.
It's almost like asking, hey, like if this ever gets replaced, he'll just slap another billboard in front of this building.
The facade work here leaves a lot to be desired. Even in the Universal Orlando version, where they're pretty good at facades, they even give a great facade to that shitty King Kong ride. The one that's in Orlando is very much still looks like a concrete building. Granted, they do have a big ass statue. I think it's like a 28-foot statue of Optimus Prime outside. But it is what it is. There's a meet and greet area outside. You can meet Optimus. You can meet Megatron.
Those are cool little.
It's fun.
Are those basically like robots on stilts or something like that?
Something like that. If I was a child, I would be like, this is the shit. I'm actually bringing my nephews to the park pretty soon after this, and I'm sure they're going to love that. Evac, the name of the guy who you're riding in, he's a ride vehicle transformer hybrid. He's a juicy exclusive for this ride. They made his character up for this attraction.
Oh, no way.
No, he's not from the films or the original IP, no one's surprise. Not exactly the most compelling character.
Yeah, they had to find a way to obviously put you in the action because, of course, the tourist is going to help us save the day.
Exactly. The recruits, as we're called in the ride. There is a yellow Volkswagen Beetle in the ride, and that was Bumblebee's alter ego in the original comic and TV series. unlike the one you saw in the film, in which I think he was like a Camaro or something like that. Can you guess where this ride vehicle is hidden in the ride?
No.
It is actually in the last portion of the ride, the last scene, right before Optimus comes over and gives you your little victory speech.
Oh, really? Right after Bumblebee catches you?
Exactly. If you look to the left, right before Optimus comes over to talk to you, it's a Volkswagen hidden in the rubbish.
Oh, interesting.
Rubbish? Is that a word?
Rummage?
Rummage? No.
I was saying
Rubble.
I think it's a rubble. Right?
It's rubble. It's hidden in the rubble. Moving on to the next fun fact. The visual effects and 3D film was created by the legendary effects house ILM, famous for their work on things like Star Wars and also Terminator 2 Judgment Day. They made my T-1000 guy look crispy. You actually ascend an elevator in this ride, and you descend an elevator in this ride. You ascend the elevator right as Optimus shouts, "Autobots, roll out!" There's actually a YouTube clip of this where somebody is literally recording the ride, but they're only looking up at the ceiling so that you could tell when the elevator is going up. You're actually going up the elevator so slow that you don't even notice it.
Oh, wow. It's almost as if they pulled some Rise of the Resistance shit before Rise of the Resistance did this shit.
A little bit. Except in Rise of the Resistance, you are aware you're going up an elevator. In this particular case, they hide it. So that way, when you fall later, literally in the ride, and Bumblebee catches you, you are actually going down an elevator. You're not going down fast, mind you, but you are going down an elevator. I remember when I was looking at ride photos of the construction of this, seeing an elevator structure in it. And I was like, what the hell is that for? And I remembered thinking, is there like a drop in this ride?
It does create that sensation, which makes me wonder. I thought this effect was also pulled off in the Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man.
It might be. There's a lot of effects they pull off in Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man that are superior to this ride, but we don't have to talk about that. Here's a quote. Like I said, I watched a behind-the-scenes documentary of this ride last night, and here's a quote from visionary filmmaker Michael Bay on making this ride. Quote, "This is a very successful franchise, so I think the subject matter is totally appropriate to be in a ride. I had a great experience helping to make this ride. This movie is totally meant to be a ride." End quote.
Says I, the director of this film, that
I like
I'm helping
this.
Construct into a ride.
This movie would be a great ride. We should totally make this into a ride. This is meant to be a ride. Not a poet, but I tell you what, Michael, I love your films. I just watched The Rock recently for the first time. A banger. I love that movie. I salute you. Funny guy. The original voice actors from the franchise reprised their roles in the ride, including Peter Cullen as Optimus and Frank Welker as Megatron. Cullen also is famous for doing the voice of Eeyore in the Winnie the Pooh series.
That's right.
So every time you look at Optimus Prime, just know that's Eeyore.
Eeyore is hardcore, man.
And I'd like to think if Eeyore, the friendly little kind of sad donkey from the 100-Acre Wood, if he could transform into a 60-foot giant mega monster, he would look like Optimus Prime. And Frank Welker, who plays Megatron, is also the voice of Fred Jones from Scooby-Doo. I had no idea. They don't even sound relatively the same. In fact, in the cast of this ride is one of the most famous cartoon characters of all time. He plays the voice of Wheelie in the ride. And Wheelie is the guy who gives you there's a portion of the ride where he's talking to you in the queue, breaking down all the Decepticons. I'll get to that later in the good and the bad. Can you guess who the most famous voice is in this cast? The character, at least.
Oh God!
Think of every famous cartoon. Who is the most famous cartoon character of all time?
Not Mickey Mouse?
That's actually, he probably would be. No, besides him.
I mean, who's as big as Mickey Mouse?
There's one that reigns supreme. You're going to hear it and you're going to be slapping yourself.
I don't know. I'm not cool, I guess.
Tom Kenny plays the voice of Wheelie, also known for playing the voice of one SpongeBob SquarePants.
What I would give to see a legitimate Bikini Bottom land.
Oh, dude, it would be great.
Crab.
I think a SpongeBob land would print money.
I know the Mall of America, and then another mall.
I've been there. The Mall of America in Minnesota has.
And then I think the New York one also has a Nickelodeon universe.
Yeah, but the Bikini Bottom is not rendered at all. It's just they happen to have SpongeBob rides.
It seems like some half-ass Nickelodeon slapped on stuff.
There's some SpongeBob rides opening soon, and there's in some regional parks that look pretty cool. I don't think they're going to be incredible, but
But oh my God, if they could like give the amount of devotion they did to some of the recent lands.
Oh my God, it would be incredible.
To like a Bikini Bottom and do a legitimate Krusty Krab.
I'd love it.
Restaurant.
I'd love
incredible.
Oh, Krusty Krab. General Morshower is played by a guy who was actually named Glenn Morshower. They just used his real name for the film and for the ride.
Sounds like a stinky guy who
Morshower
got the nickname. Just Glenn needs more shower.
I will say I've seen him before. He looks like he showers, but I just think it's hilarious that they cast him in this movie and they were like, we're just going to call you your name.
He gives a good effort in this pre-show.
He gives a good effort. The city we traveled through is Chicago, and it was created by putting a 360-degree camera on a large lift high above the building so the folks at ILM could recreate this digitally in 3D in photorealistic quality. They also had to account for a 270-degree view, which made it even harder. They mentioned in the documentary that if you go on the ride and you look down some of the streets, the side streets, you can actually see real stores and stuff because they did recreate Chicago, just in case people are looking. They had to account for any direction people would look in this ride. I think this is a short fun facts section because there was a surprising lack of fun facts. I just thought this really made me laugh. The fighting style of the Transformers, and I know this because I was looking at the, I guess, like performers that got mocapped, is mixed martial arts. They just thought it made the most sense when it came to Transformers, these big beings fighting each other, that they would use MMA.
I approve.
I don't know why I think that's so funny. Just imagining Optimus Prime in like a judo class or some shit like that is fucking classic. And with that, we move on to the good and the bad. But before we do that, let's go ahead and thank our sponsors. And we are back. Let's get into the good and the bad. What are the good and the bad things about this ride? We're going to go through these one by one. We're going to start with the good, and then we're going to move on to the bad. Starting with the good. Here we go. First good. Q is spectacular, in my opinion. You're stationed in a nest bunker. It sets up the story perfectly. Even if you don't like the story, you have to agree. You know what the story is if you go through this queue. You're recruits coming into the nest base, which is being overtaken by Decepticons. You have to go get the AllSpark. The Autobots are going to try and clear the way for you. That's the story. More showers there.
You're out of line.
Cool guy. Real name. You see the AllSpark in the queue in like this funny little glass vial. I think that's pretty thrilling if you like the films. You also see that weird Decepticon tail thing that they found in the desert. I forget which movie it was. Mm-hmm. Tyrese is screaming. You know, it's a fun time in this queue. I think they did a good job of bringing the world of the film into the queue, whether you like the film or not. I have to respect it. Next good, fun performance from this. There's a guy that Morshower is talking to. He's like a scientist in the facility, and he's really going for it on some of these line readings. There's one part where he goes, "Don't do this. Don't listen to him. Mutiny. Chicken out. Don't. Stop. Don't. Stop. And he's doing this to like a security camera, and the camera's all shaky and shit's exploding behind him. I enjoy it. I enjoy it. I think it's very fun. Very similar vibe to the performance of the people in the dinosaur attraction over in the Animal Kingdom in Disney World. There's also like a New Yorker Transformer who, by the way, I believe that's Wheelie. And this is the guy who plays SpongeBob. I just put that together right now. But this SpongeBob guy, he's pretty much giving a play-by-play. There's one point in the queue where he's talking about Ravage moving through the facility. He's like, "Oh, damn, that's Ravage. Sub-level 9, sub-level 8, sub-level 7. Oh, man, that thing can move. He's heading right for the AllSpark."
Oh, man, that thing can move. He's heading right for the AllSpark.
It's really funny stuff. I enjoy all these funny little performances. I normally am annoyed by a bunch of screens, but they're tied into theming that's pretty well done for the most part, so I'll forgive the occasional hanging screen over the queue, especially when we have a voice actor royalty like SpongeBob doing these lines. I'm going to think of that every time I ride this now. That's SpongeBob telling me to watch out for Ravage. Oh man, that thing can move. Also, Wheelie gives the lineup of Decepticons. He says things like, "Decepticon Starscream identified. Decepticon Sideways identified. Oh, and Megatron, oh no, it's serious." And this is good because it gives you the cast of characters. You're seeing the roster of folks that you're going to meet out in the wild and eventually kill. It's a fun setup. Like I said, the queue does a great job of setting up the story, and I think that's all you can ask for a queue to do, to distract you from the fact that you're standing in line and to tell the story before you get on the ride. So I salute you. The boarding is kind of fun. They have like the employees they're like, come on, go, get in the cars.
They're like in their camo.
Make sure you have your 3D glasses on. I think they call them attack visors.
They look like Nest soldiers, essentially, right?
Yeah, they're in sometimes you'll see.
They got like their boots and stuff on and the camo.
Exactly, and it really does suck when you see these folks walk around the park after their shift is over.
Yeah,
you really miss those utilidors you see at Disney World.
I was gonna say,
just people in a Nest full camo outfit walking by Harry Potter Land,
just heading up the escalator.
It's kind of heading up the Starway.
Like, oh my God, are we under attack? What's going on?
Exactly, the vibe is off. I like the fluidity of these vehicles, and the timing of when they are grabbed or landed on plays really well with the footage. When you open the ride, there's a part where a Ravage jumps on your truck, and he's kind of like, he jumps on Evac rather, and you're kind of getting wiggled around. It's very viable. We have the hot potato version of AllSpark. Everyone's trying to get this AllSpark. First Optimus sighting rules, I have to say, still to this day. It's truly crazy to see him kind of like transform from a car, slide on his knees, and then stand up on this 60-foot screen. You really feel the scale. And it's one of the few tall screens where you can't really see where the screen ends.
That's right. It really motivates your eyes to move up and see how big.
And then he says his famous Autobots roll out. We go 60 miles per hour in our brains as we go down the street. He tackles Megatron. It's a great start to the ride, and you're off to the races. And that first little Optimus and Megatron slugfest that you see, and not after this part, it's like a scene or two later, they're wrestling. And this leads to perhaps my favorite moment in the entire ride. Megatron is not able to be submitted by Optimus, and he gets his arm up, and he shoots a missile at you.
Oh, yeah.
And this is one of the few instances of slow motion in this ride. You see the missile come towards you in slow-mo. You feel the heat of the missile, and you hear it. It's like a dit-dit-dit-dit-dit-dit.
When the car spins and you actually see like the
blast of the missile. It's a really effective, cool moment in the ride.
It's clearly a copy of what they do in the Spider-Man when the Green Goblin throws the flaming jack-o'-lantern at you, and that flame effect comes out. It's
the hobgoblin bombs. I don't know what the hell you call them. Don't get at me, Spider-Man nerds. But I will say that I think the Spider-Man version is superior because you get actual practical fire.
Yeah.
Or in this particular case, it's just heat and a light. I wish they would actually have fire here, but I get why they probably wouldn't.
I mean, I'm surprised when I get anything nowadays.
Yeah, when it's practical effect.
Which we might cover at a later time in this show.
Then you get sucked out of the tunnel by Devastator, which is that big kind of like mouth-looking thing. And that pivot, when you fall down to the ground, and then the ride vehicle turns around, and there's debris above your head that's practical. That's actually a pretty cool effect, just as a transition from the screen. And then from there, we have another slow-mo shot of you firing your missiles at Decepticons in the air. Like Evac pulls out his gun and it's like, doof, doof. It's a pretty cool moment there.
Yeah.
This is like, I always forget how much slow-mo is featured in these Transformer films. It's a lot. There's a lot of slow-mo before it kind of became satirized. Lots of slow-mo. Go off, Michael Bay. Do your thing. It's fun in the ride. It puts you in the world of the films.
And they actually get the motion of the ride vehicle to work really well with the visuals of that slow-mo.
They really do. It feels like it. Then we go into that Decepticon's belly, the Devastator. We put on our battle shields, and then we fly through. Then I always think that's funny. Good sound design. There's a part of the ride that always makes me laugh my ass off when we get like a tow rope attached to us. And this guy's just dragging us through buildings. It's mayhem.
It basically just whips you horizontally, basically, and just smash through the glass.
It's incredible. In this ride's heyday, when it first opened, when I convinced Byron to get a season pass, we were students at Chapman University, way down the freeway, but you could take the train. From Chapman University all the way to Universal. And so we would do that, and we would go to City Walk, and there was a cantina there that had $3 margaritas during happy hour, and we would just get absolutely tanked. And then we would go on Transformers, and I recall being dragged by this tow rope, screaming my ass off. And just annoying the shit out of everybody in this ride, probably, just because it was so much fun. So I do, that does bring me back to a very fun memory. Optimus getting his ass kicked by Megatron, he kind of turns to you and says, "Protect the AllSpark." And I remember, I'm just like, dude, is this guy gonna fucking die? Like, is he? Because he gets like uppercutted into the chest area, and there's like a bunch of wires that get pulled out.
And he disappears and he figures it out off screen.
Yeah, exactly. He clearly gets out of that grapple. Then there's the falling into Bumblebee's waiting arms. He catches you. I think Bumblebee's kind of corny. I'm not a big fan of him as a character. I did like the film, though. Pretty much just E.T. with robots. And then we have this final Optimus speech, which, look, if you haven't gathered by now, I'm not the biggest fan of this IP, but I will say the speech does get me going. It gets a little...
And by speech, it's just, what? You have saved the planet.
He says, "Your bravery has saved the planet."
Well done, freedom fighters.
And
then you get that music. You get the music. Yeah.
Oh, and then they show basically the carcass.
Yeah,
like the dead Megatron, right?
You see a giant Megatron carcass with its eyeballs losing light.
It's like smoke coming out of it.
There's an AllSpark in his chest. There's also inexplicably a giant ninja star in the wall. Who's throwing that? Is that Megatron? Does he have ninja stars? Did I miss something?
I have no idea.
Is there like a ninja? I guess if they have Transformers,
that's separate from the AllSpark that's like wedged in them?
I just feel like that's not canon.
I wouldn't be able. I'm not an expert on Transformers.
Granted,
so
they have Transformers that are rhinoceros now and like gorillas. So
Beast
I suppose
Wars. See, that's Beast Wars.
So I suppose they could have a Transformer that for some reason is a ninja. But anyways, giant ninja star, kind of cool.
Nice.
That does it for my good.
Yeah, and I'll add. I think. I mean, I'm kind of hit and miss when it comes to like, oh, we're gonna make you the tourist, like help us save the day, kind of thing. But I will say a good of.
It doesn't feel contrived for you in this one.
It does, but at least I enjoy the moment of you making this decision to like where it's like he wants the AllSpark, he can have it, and you actually use it to defeat it before falling to your death. I think it's a pretty thrilling moment.
My favorite part is still Optimus telling me my bravery saved the planet.
That's cool.
And then he calls me a freedom fighter.
They dedicate like a massive screen to that.
It gets a wiggle out of me. It gets a little wiggle.
I'll add like the movements of the vehicle are like pretty smooth. Like I'm not usually the biggest fan of these screen-based attractions, but I will say ILM fucking crushed it. I will say
for what this ride is,
because it doesn't look overly CG.
No,
it has the same like kind of look. Like I'll compare this to like when you first like went on Star Tours, like the first iteration of Star Tours, where it clearly looks like film, and it clearly looks like the planets and the stuff that you're going through is real and not like animated.
Yeah,
and I think they pull that off pretty well with like you were saying with how they have like the 3D renderings of the city.
Yeah, they wanted to make things look photorealistic. They said photorealistic like 18 times in that documentary. So they really went at length to make sure that the environments seemed real.
Yeah.
And I have to say what you want about this ride, and I certainly will. I don't like screen-based attractions. However, I think for what this ride is, it's a pretty good ride. Yeah. I just don't particularly enjoy it.
I do think the perception of speed is achieved in that moment where,
I think
where he pulls the Autobots roll out like that moment.
I think that all is a good segue into the bad. And this may be one of the few instances where the number of bullet points is just as much as the number of goods. So here we go.
Oh boy.
First off, these 3D glasses, they need some TLC. Last time I got these 3D glasses, I saw one and I was like, no, I don't want that one. It looks too dirty. And the guy handed me another one.
It's like, this one's worse.
And this one was even worse. It looked like someone splooged all over the glasses, dude. It wasn't a good look.
They had just seen a working Indominus Rex.
Yeah, it was rough. It was not, and it's hard. It's hard to see through these 3D glasses. It just is. I think part of the reason why the images on screen look so photorealistic is because I'm looking at them through what appears to be the lens of a magnifying glass from the 1800s. Just
and for many of you, there was a period of time, and still for some, and even on certain occasions when like I need to stay healthy because I know like something's coming up that I need to be like healthy for, whether it's a wedding or like a shoot or what have you, where like I will wear masks on indoor attractions or pre-shows. And I bring this up because 3D glasses and wearing a mask. Now, of course, I don't think this is going to be the norm for everyone.
It fogs.
Immediately fogs up. It's brutal.
It's rough. Also, like your ocular cavities, one of the greatest receptors for COVID. I just don't like 3D glasses on my face anymore. There's also a part in the queue
You could probably get pink eye off
where
this,
they
too.
encourage you to like, touch all. There's the little COVID consoles where they like encourage you to like touch buttons and flip switches, and I don't like those either.
And those hand sanitizer dispensers off the ride are never full.
They're
of
never
hand
working.
sanitizer. They're just gone by 10 a.m.
That's true. Next bad, I just wrote, I hate getting sprayed. I don't like getting sprayed by water.
This isn't a water ride. What
Dude, there's that portion where Megatron's it's the first time he appears. I can't remember what he says. Something along the lines of "I'm Megatron," and then
Hear me
water
roar.
and like a coolant line in the subway gets broken, and then he gets like and he gets sprayed by it because
That's what
Megatron
it
hates
is.
water, I
Okay,
guess.
yeah.
And then you get sprayed as the audience, and I'm always like, me too, Megatron. I hate water. Stop it. Unless I'm signing up for water. I just don't like getting water sprayed at me in like a cold theater environment. That's why I didn't even like when like that dog would sneeze on you in Honey, I Shrunk the Audience.
Oh man, that's a throwback.
Anyways, next bad. It's a little too long into the ride for me before we see our first true live element. There's mentions of like there's a part in the beginning with Ravage. He's like he's on the catwalk and there's a catwalk above your head. You can't even see it. But the first live element is there's a part where you are trying to run away and then Evac says, "Oh, wrong way, we're trapped."
Oh,
and you
that's
see
right.
you see like a tunnel.
You're just looking at walls.
But at least
basically,
that's the
right?
first time you see something that's an actual physical set in a meaningful way for the first,
And it's clearly just a way to get you to the next screen, though, as opposed to like, let's say the AT-ATs and Rise of the Resistance, or
which was my next bad. I think the transitions in this ride are clearly ways to just get you from screen
to the
screen.
next screen. And that leads me to my next bad, where you said that this is like 2,000 feet of track length. It doesn't feel
Show me the
like
track.
it. Honestly, until you brought that up, I just assumed that they were just like cycling you back to to repurpose screens. It doesn't feel like you're covering that much space. Despite the film showing you go through an entire city, I just keep thinking, I'm just in a little box.
It's a lot.
It doesn't feel like a 60,000 square foot.
It doesn't feel completely motivated, the transitions in this. It really does feel like you're going from screen to screen, which I don't enjoy.
Because that's all they are. They're just like walls of like, it clearly looks like a transition as apart from its own scene.
Yeah.
Whereas like, let's say like Mickey and Minnie, like all projections basically, but like, for example, you fly through that tornado scene, you're going through an entire room and interacting with an actual spinning tornado.
Or when the water flood comes in, then all of a sudden you are in the water main of the city.
Yeah. It clearly just feels like every time you're facing a wall and spinning like that, it's just like, oh, like just face this way. Like we're just going to wait, like just got to stall a second or two while we get you to the next screen to flip you into.
It feels like that to me. Anyways, moving on. I don't even know why I wrote this. I just wrote just dropping in. There's some corny ass lines in this.
It's Transformers. What do you
when
expect?
when that guy, I think it's Starscream, he comes in.
Just dropping in.
And I'm always like, shut up. Not even because you're a villain, just because you're annoying. Next thing I wrote, Evac is a dork. He's a fucking dorky ass character. Every line of dialogue he has in this ride is uncool, which is, they sell a toy of this guy. I would love to see a spreadsheet with how many Evac toys they're selling, because it can't be many. And that's crazy because you are literally riding in him. You see him the most. I bet you no kid after this ride is like, let me get an Evac toy. And look, this is nothing against the actor. He's been given some pretty rough dialogue. Let's just go through a couple lines of Evac dialogue. There's a part where he goes, that was a little scary. How about a little warning next time? Oh no, we're trapped. Activate battle shields. No more running. You want the AllSpark? You can have it. It's fucking just the worst. Also, no more running before? Does that imply that this guy's like a deserter? Should he have been killed a long time ago? Like, is this like the backstory?
I think it's because you spend the entire time trying to because you have once you acquire the AllSpark.
Oh yeah,
you're trying to basically run it away from
that's
the
fair.
Decepticons.
That's
so you're
fair.
trying to get away from the battle, and they're trying. So basically, it's making the choice. That's why I don't mind that moment, because it's deciding. In order to actually get away, we actually have to perform some offense.
I'd actually prefer to see Optimus kill Megatron. I don't think it's cool that Evac kills him. Megatron can't get killed by... They nerfed him. They nerfed Megatron on the ride. And I'm not even like a big Megatron head, but I'm just saying.
It could have been cool if there's a moment where it looks like we're like against the ropes and we're like kind of on our, we're about to get offed essentially. And then, Optimus performs like a T-Rex from Jurassic Park and swoops in and
it would be
kicks
great.
some ass.
I think that would be great. If I'm Megatron and I die and I get to hell and I find out that I was killed by Evac, I'd kill myself again. Yeah. I don't even know how I'd be able to. I'd feel like I should be punished for that for eternity because I lost to a guy that says, "How about a little warning next time?"
This sounds like Evac's in a passive aggressive little transformer.
He also at the end of the ride, you get this rousing little line of dialogue from Optimus Prime, a hero you've grown and watched for years now or decades at this point. And then the ending line of dialogue is Evac saying, "You could ride with Evac anytime." And I'm like, not going to take you up on that offer. I don't want to ride with you now. The screens, this ride has a lot of them. I don't like screen rides. I don't want to keep harping on it. This to me, you know what it is? I really, truly enjoyed the shit out of this ride when I first went on it. And over time, I'm realizing that the reason why I don't enjoy it that much anymore is not so much a direct indictment of the ride, but what the ride represents. Because to me, this ride was patient zero for the screen onslaught that came out of Universal for the next decade.
But the thing is, it wasn't the first one.
It wasn't, but
there was a screen ride that they had done with the same technology.
Spider-Man.
That was done so much better.
But only in that park. This was the first ride where they shotgun blasted it everywhere.
Yeah.
And then from there on,
it really does feel
look
like
at their
copy
attraction
paste.
list from this moment on. Screen ride after screen ride after screen ride.
Well, they've been trying to course correct for the past few years. That's why we have Secret Life of Pets. That's why we have Hagrid's.
Which is great.
That's why we have, I guess, Nintendo World, although that kind of like falls into it to a certain extent.
Yeah, it's kind of like...
Even Forbidden Journey was kind of at the tail end of this movement, it feels like. Or maybe even in the middle of it.
Like, for instance, if you want to make the superhero comparison, like we have Iron Man, that started the onslaught of superhero movies, and obviously there are great superhero movies going all the way up to Endgame, and now there are ones that are really bad.
Yeah.
And they kind of changed the course of cinema for a bit. I feel like this is that for rides. Like, this represents a dark time.
Yeah.
And even though this ride, I think, was actually pretty well done for what it is, it is, in my mind, simpatico with just screens.
If, let's say it was closer to the 40 million you suggested as opposed to the 100 million, that would make a whole lot of sense that Universal thinks, oh, well, if we could make an attraction for 40 million as opposed to like the 100 plus that we spent on Jurassic Park with a franchise and still give it like a big e-ticket, like, vibe, why would we spend the extra 60 mil?
Exactly. Yeah, because we could do it on a screen.
And then that's where Jeff Goldblum comes in and says that's something about whether or not we should. Or
you spend so much time thinking if you should,
now
never
I'm
stop to
butchering
think.
that line.
You spend so much time thinking if you should, never stop to think if you. No, fuck!
It's impossible to get right.
You spend so much time thinking
this
if you
is
could.
Impossible right.
You never stop to think if you should.
There it is.
There it is. Next bad, not enough live action elements, and the mixing of live elements is merely peripheral. There's no way they're really mixed in a meaningful way. Like there's a part where you get slammed through an office and you hit barrels. You see a barrel in front of you. But there's nothing like in Spider-Man where you land on a lamppost and the lamppost moves, or the Green Goblin throwing a bomb and it explodes through a brick wall, or Doc Ock lifting up a Statue of Liberty head.
It's like if Universal Creative at the time, like, someone on the lower level was basically like, oh, could we get like this practical element in this scene? And then like the executive's like, well, can you buy it at Home Depot? No, then no.
Exactly. No, they Home Depot-fied.
Can you get a trash can at Home Depot? Yeah, there you go.
There, we got some trash cans. Megatron slaps Optimus into some trash cans. Better put a trash can in front of this car to make it look like it came from the real life and not a screen. Next bad here. Oh, this actually this isn't my bad. I was doing research for this ride, and on one of these like tourist websites, there was reviews at the bottom of the page. So I just looked at some of them. And this comes from somebody named Johnny T from UniversalOrlandoFanGuide.com. UOFanguide.com. He says, quote, "Really, my only complaint is that at the very end of the ride, it looks like a single white decoration light represents the AllSpark in Megatron's chest. It just looks cheap, like they only had $5 left and figured, good enough. I think it's hilarious that if you have only one criticism of this ride, this guy honed in on Megatron's chest. The only real practical effect in the ride,
coolest practical looking
which
thing.
is this giant Megatron corpse, and he's like, hey, wait a second, that doesn't look like the AllSpark in his chest. That's what he's nitpicking? That's crazy to me.
Hey, Johnny T, you do you.
Anyways, that does it for my bads. Do you have any more bads to add?
You know,
here?
I'm going to add to the bads here. I think this is... Oh, you know, I got a couple, actually. We'll go back to the queue. I know you said how much you love the queue. There are great portions of the queue that really encapsulate and set up the story. However, if you're actually waiting in these queue rooms, that means you're waiting for a long time, because traditionally if you wait 30 minutes or less for this ride, you're toward the end of the queue, which is like, there's a lot of rooms.
There's a lot of rooms.
Make out this queue. You're never waiting outside. Even if it's like an hour wait, you're going in the building. And the whole like second half of the queue is comprised of just long ramps and hallways to get you down to the boarding.
It is true.
So you traditionally, unless you're like waiting an hour, which fuck, I would not want to, you are pretty much forced, because there's also like narrow walkways where you like you can't hold up the line.
Yeah.
So you can't like sit and appreciate the AllSpark sitting in the middle of that circular room, or really take in the story buildup. So most of the times I've been on this ride, I've had no idea what the setup was. I actually had to like stop for a while and stall to figure out what the mission actually was going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obvious in the rides, like, oh, AllSpark this, AllSpark that, like save the AllSpark, keep, you know. So the fact that that's set up so early in the queue, and then you just kind of like this limp dick second half of the queue. Yeah. It's just, I think that's a bad, like, if anything, what they should change, if they're going to have you, like, maybe if it doesn't work with the layout of their queue, just have like a team member or something, like, hold up the line and kind of do like the group like release.
Yeah, so that way you're not walking, you're not spending extended time in these hallways.
Yeah, so they could actually be treated
like they do at Space Mountain,
which as they should be treated as, like, you know, they have like decently produced footage that
and
everyone usually
walks
walks through, and it's not even the benefit of, oh, this is like a walk on. You could wait half an hour and not get those neat pre-show experiences,
but you'll get all 30 minutes of the ramp.
So that's a big bad for me. And then on top of that, there is a moment about halfway through this ride to 3/4 of the way through this ride where it gets kind of redundant.
Oh, yeah. It feels like a lot.
Extremely redundant. It's like, how many times do I have to get thrown through a building, watch, like, you know, this, it is very, like, to me, how I kind of feel with a lot of these Transformers, Michael Bay style films.
I feel about sometimes about the superhero
where I'm not
films.
getting, you're not getting a lot of substance.
Just
nothing's
third act
building on
CGI
a third, like,
slugfest.
Where you just don't feel as emotionally connected to it, where most of the time, and I don't know if this is just like, this might be not be going in its favor just by coincidence. A lot of the times I go on this ride and I have other things in life that are like, that I tried to throw on the back burner that I was stressed about often. Cause like I also work, like, you know, in entertainment, and, you know, there's been times where you're working on a show or something and you're really stressed out and you want to go blow off some steam and wait for traffic to die down at Universal. And then a half to 3/4 of the way through this ride, I'll start thinking about that shit, because I just kind of disengage and start not thinking about the actual ride. It's like, do I have to have 2 interactions with Devastator?
No, we don't.
Like, because you run from him at the beginning because he's trying to suck you in or whatever, and it's like, oh no, whatever, and then all of a sudden, like 2 minutes later, you're like, oh, you're back? Raise the shields. We had those the whole fucking time.
Activate battle shields is what Evac says.
Yeah, and it's like, why couldn't that have just been like,
why couldn't you have,
oh shit, we're getting pulled in, activate the shields on the first go.
Activate the battle shields the first go. I always wonder that.
And
what's the point?
This ride feels so fucking redundant.
It's kind of crazy that when faced with footage of 2 giant robots beating the shit out of each other on a 60-foot screen, your mind, and most people's mind, still wanders to like life.
Well, because the novelty of it fades away after 2 minutes. It just feels like you're getting the same thing for the other 2 minutes.
It's a bit mishmash.
And you're just like, just get me to like falling down the building and getting caught at this point.
Is there another bad here?
No, that's good.
It's time for the world-class tests. This is a rubric of 10 tests painstakingly devised by Byron and myself to determine if an attraction is world-class. To receive the highly coveted world-class pass, the attraction must pass 7 out of 10 tests. A score of 6 out of 10 tests leaves the attraction up for debate for world-class pass standing. And anything lower than 6 out of 10 is an automatic fail. Without further ado, let's get into the tests. Test number 1, the average tourist test. Would the average tourist have a hard time getting on this ride? Is there a long wait? Is there a complicated queue system? No, they would not have a hard
Simple,
time.
straightforward. The average wait time all time is like about half an hour.
Easy
And
peasy.
once again, especially when you have like a finite amount of rides or a limited amount of rides in your park, especially Hollywood,
Yes.
you're not going to miss it. But I think any park you go to, it's going to be, hard to miss.
No,
And-
it's easy pass for me. I mean, also, particularly with Hollywood, the best thing that happened if you're a Transformers fan is Mario Kart going in next to it because everyone goes there.
You're getting pulled back to the back of the park.
I often see Transformers at like 5 to 10 minutes on the app.
Yeah.
Which is
and
interesting.
they also have a single rider line, right?
I think they
I
do.
believe they have a single rider line.
They do. That's 1 for 1. Moving on to test number 2. Very curious how this is going to score. Test number 2, the Leslie Stahl test. Would you be willing to wait 60 minutes for this attraction if you've already been on it at least once? No.
That's a negative.
No way.
I can't. Yeah, you know what? And that's the thing is like there is some interesting stuff in the queue. I would say like 30. I don't even think I could say 45 minutes. And that whole second half of the queue is so boring and slow. And that's the portion that you're actually waiting in. The interesting stuff you aren't. I mean, I could get it like for first time goers and you have one day at Universal.
I don't get it.
It's a crowded day, an hour. Sure, do it. But since we've kind of altered this test to be like, in terms of like, would I be willing to wait 60 to rewrite it? Absolutely not.
No way. No way in hell. That is 1 for 2. Moving on to test number 3, the smartphone test. Does the queue of this ride have enough to keep you off of your phone?
The first half does.
And I agree with that. The first half does.
You can pass this test, Universal, and I always fucking do this where I try and get, where I just assume that someone working for the company is listening to this podcast, although besides our parents, I don't think anyone is.
Yeah.
Just hold the line up at the really interesting stuff and then just let people gracefully like walk down like they're approaching their mission.
Exactly. Walk down the ramp, get your foggy glasses and get on the ride.
Don't have people wait in like the boring ass hallway.
I don't want to dock them because the first half I think is actually pretty well done. The second
And also
half is brutal.
I can only speak for Hollywood's rendition of the ride. Oh wait. No, I could speak for Florida's too. I've actually waited in that one like half an hour.
Yeah, and how is it much different?
It's not that much different. I just can't remember how much hallway you had after the fun stuff.
I'm going to, and I may regret this, I'm going to pass it because I do think there's enough story being thrown at you in that first half. That second half, God forbid you're in it. Granted, like you said, though, they make you walk past all the story stuff.
That's what I'm
and
saying.
then just stand in line in the bland area.
So whether you're waiting in that portion or not, the way the ride functions today is you are guaranteed to wait in the boring part. You are not guaranteed to wait in the exciting part. And by that virtue, I think it's a fail. By the way, if we disagree, can we go 0.5 if you want to do that? Or is...
We could call it a 0.5 for now. How about that? What about we relitigate this one at the end in case it comes down to it?
It's not going to change. It's not going to change. I think you got to say yes or no, Ryan.
I'm going to go yes.
So 0.5.
It's going to get a 1.5 out of 3. Great. That might become huge if we have more disagreements down the line.
Yeah.
Tony Stark test number 4. We're at 1.5 out of 3. How innovative is this attraction? Does it push theme park tech forward? No, I don't think it does.
You don't think so?
It took the ride system of Spider-Man and
It took the ride
and it
system
does
of
it worse.
Spider-Man, but I mean, let's talk about those 360 cameras. because Spider-Man has more of a comic book effect, which means they had to, in order to make this look super lifelike, I think the screens and what ILM pulled off with the 360 camera and recreating a city, I don't think to that scale has ever been done before.
It has, because it had happened with King Kong 3D.
Which did come out before Transformers.
And that was 360.
But they weren't reconstructed. That's all animated.
So was this.
But they took like real photography of the city.
To get a reference of the city, but not to actually use it. They created a 360 environment in Kong 360 for the tram. This is 270, so it's not even full 360. It's basically a version of that, except moving with the same ride system as Spider-Man. I don't know, man. I'm trying to not let my disdain for this ride, because I actually don't think this pushed theme park tech forward. I think it pushed it backwards.
I was just going to say, I think I'm actually starting to realize that this started an ugly precedent.
It really did.
And took Universal down a path that they are still trying to correct themselves from. So it should
they are correcting themselves.
It should lose a point. Potentially.
I think it's a fail.
And I do think that once you bring it up, King Kong gets me on the, I think, I agree. I think it is a fail then.
Fuck yeah.
Because it is not the first. Well done, Ryan. Well done.
1.5 out of 4. That's a fail.
Not well done for Transformers. I'm sorry, guys.
Moving on to test number 5 out of, we're at 1.5 out of 4. The Hollywood test. Can this attraction be adapted for the silver screen? Does it have a comprehensible story? Yeah, it does.
Why not?
It came from a film franchise. I actually think there's a comprehensible story even alone as a standalone for this ride. I think this is a very clear pass.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think it actually is a creative way of getting you involved in the ride.
And I don't typically
even though I have mixed feelings usually with the theme park attractions. Sometimes I just like being like kind of like a fly on the wall, like Pirates or Haunted Mansion, where you're just kind of like taking in the atmosphere, almost like you're like kind of sneaking through undercover.
It's kind of a tired theme park trope to enlist the help of the tourists, or in this case, the recruits. I think this is the best version of this. In fact, before this, our producer, Matt Rial, was telling us about something he tweeted that was actually, it's pretty good. I think it was something along the lines of like, every theme park attraction, we need your help. And then he tweeted, I'm on vacation. It's pretty good.
Well done, Matt.
It's well done. And this is the best version of that, I will say. We're at 2.5 out of 5. Not looking good.
Yeah, we've had comebacks like this in the past, though, so we'll see how it does.
We'll see about that.
Unfortunately, a 5.5 will not get it there.
It will not.
And a 6.5 will not get it there. So
it'll be in debate land.
It'll be in debate land.
Test number 6, the Simpson test. How likely is this ride to be replaced with something new?
And are we going just off Hollywood, or are we going to go Hollywood, Orlando, just in general? I think this has the potential of getting replaced in all of these parks.
I would agree with that, I think.
I don't think it'll get replaced in every park, but I think every park is vulnerable to it, and I would actually bet that one of these parks within the next 10 to 15 years will get replaced by something new.
We're also seeing that the IP already has significant fatigue. I don't think anyone saw Rise of the Beasts, which is the new Transformers film. Normally, I would say company puts out a new Transformers film. Obviously, it still has life, but then the box office shows it does not. Maybe they'll reboot it, but I have to also agree, Universal has shown in the past it is not afraid to take out classic IP. Now, they put a significant financial capital into this, though.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, if I were to play devil's advocate, Beijing, that opened in 2021, opened with this attraction. So up until a couple years ago, they still had faith in this IP. However, in China, I think Transformers crushes it. So once again, I still think that one of these parks, I don't think it'll be Beijing, but I could definitely see Hollywood losing it. I could definitely see Orlando losing it. I think Singapore could hold on. Once again, I just think it's a very globally popular IP, but in the States, I could easily see another IP replacing it. I mean, Back to the Future that was super popular. They had a Terminator attraction. I mean, it's fucking Terminator. That got replaced. I think it's a fail.
I don't think it's going to get replaced in Beijing. I don't think it's going to get replaced in Singapore.
All right, so we get it at 0.5 then?
I think I'm going to have to pass it.
Is that 3 now?
That is... It's a 3 out of 6.
We're back to equilibrium.
3 out of 6. Moving on to test number 7, the signature moment test. Can this ride hold its own without its signature moment? Is it a one-trick pony?
I don't know if it holds its own with the signature moment. I think the signature moment for me is the Autobots roll out and you get that perceived 60 mile an hour.
I think I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's the most effective like illusion of speed, if that makes sense, that I've ever felt on a motion simulator.
I would say it's pretty good. I also think the missile is up there.
The missile is cool when it's fucking working. It doesn't fucking work at the Hollywood version anymore.
That's
half the
fair.
time.
I think seeing the Megatron corpse at the end is pretty cool.
Is that a signature moment though?
You're
basically just slowly pulling up to the station at that point.
Well, I'm just saying that like there are other things in here. Like if
if
you lose the
it,
Autobots rollout moment, I still think there's a thrilling ride here. I actually am gonna pass this.
I disagree. Well, here's the deal, because
I'd love to hear the argument.
My argument is that the second half of this ride is so redundant, and I like always zone out.
That's
through
true.
that cluster of robots fighting, that when I think of like key moments in the ride, that first half is, once you go through that sensation of zooming down the street with Optimus Prime, you kind of get a lot of fluff after that. And then you're kind of waiting, and other people could argue the signature moment is maybe like falling from the building and getting caught by Bumblebee. However, if you remove one of those two moments, you're left with a lot of fat.
Yeah, I guess. I
go fail.
I guess I'll fail it.
I mean, you could go 0.5 again.
No, I'm going to fail it. I mean, I don't enjoy the rest of the only moment I really am thrilled. You can make an argument for the missile, but really it is when we go fast, when we go real fast. I'm Sonic.
Because that's the other thing is like, I guess that almost
sounded like a toddler.
It's weird that you do get that sensation of speed going through that street, and then the rest of the ride you do not.
You get nothing.
And it's like, well, what the hell? Like,
it's a lot of the same.
2 minutes later, you're getting flung through a building, which, when you look at the footage, looks like you're getting whipped at 150 miles an hour, but you don't get that sensation.
And if you want to go
physically
into the more the description of the test, is it a one-trick pony? It might be the definition of a one-trick pony, because it feels the same. It's very redundant. You're going from screen to screen, regardless of what's happening on the screen. So, yeah. Okay, I feel confident in that. That's a fail. 3 out of 7. All right, let's close this out. Can it get to debate land? Test number 8, the premature detraculation test. Does this ride finish too soon? I don't think it finishes soon enough, to be honest.
Yeah, is there like can we fail the detraculation test for feeling too long?
I think you can, dude. I think you should. This is a poorly paced ride in the sense of you do get a lot of ride for your bang. And if you're having a good time, this does last a fair amount. So I do think by that virtue, it should pass.
It fails in the sense that I wish it would detract prematurely.
Yeah, but I do think if you're digging it, you're happy at the length. You're not feeling cheated, especially if you waited like 45 minutes. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck here.
So you think it is a pass?
I think it's a pass.
But can we fail? Are we allowed to fail it if we think it feels too long?
I think you can if you'd like. But if you want to go by the actual nature of the test, I think it's a pass. Think about it this way. You're an average tourist going through this park.
Yeah, I guess I'm not evaluating the quality of this ride. I'm just the length of the experience. I guess that's the reason why this test exists.
If you're a tourist at the park and it's a busy day, lines for everything, you're not going to be disappointed by how long the ride is in this case.
That's true. And I think it's really only on re-rides that you feel the extra length.
I agree. It's a pass. I think it's a pass.
Yeah, I'll give it a pass.
That's 4 out of 8. We're still in the game. Let's go to the number 9.
You're tugging me over the line on this one, I swear.
Well, you know I love tugging you.
Yeah.
Anyways, test number 9, the exit hall test. Do you see people be physically excited getting off of this ride? Do you have that bounce in you when you leave?
That's so fucking tough, actually.
Is it? Is it?
Because, I mean, it depends on... I thought I was pretty stoked the first time I went on this ride.
I was pretty stoked the first time I got off this ride. However,
I don't think I've ever felt that since.
I have seen people get off this excitedly. I personally don't, but then again, it's also fuzzed. The radar's fuzzed because they do that thing at Universal where they clap at the end of the ride. The ride attendants will do that.
Yeah.
and kind of force you into a forced standing ovation, if you will.
As a matter of fact, I think a lot of people leave this ride fairly nauseous.
Yeah.
As with many of the screen-based attractions. I actually know people, like, for example, Greg Winkler,
Or my wife.
who will not ride this or Forbidden Journey
because of the screens.
because of the 3D and how dizzy the screens make you.
Hey,
so
look, I'm failing it.
I'm gonna fail it. That means it's official. It can't pass, right?
It cannot pass. You shall not pass. There we find it. I can finally say that. All right, moving on to test number 10. Let's see if we can get to 5, though. The fine wine test. Has this ride aged well? Has your opinion of the attraction appreciated or depreciated since your first experience? Or if it's a new ride, do you believe it will age well?
Anyone out there want to take a wild guess?
I think this is a pretty clear fail. This might be the clearest fail I've ever had in this show.
And like, I mean, I guess now we could kind of bring up some first impressions. Like, I remember being pretty stoked. I don't know if it was those beers at City Walk before we got on this ride the first time, but
I love this ride when it first
being
came
pretty
out.
impressed with this ride the first time I got off, and now every time I've gotten off this ride since, I'm kind of like, all right, we got that one out of the way.
Anytime a ride,
It almost feels like an obligation to ride. At
it
this
does
point.
now because it's like,
Because
well,
it's
there's
like
a 5-minute wait.
Gotta knock out the lower lot attractions, and like there's only so much at Universal Studios Hollywood. As like when I mean we just recently went to Orlando, right?
Yeah, we did not get on this ride.
I have only been on this in Orlando once.
There's no point, but it is an obligation. There's 5 minutes. It's like I got to get on it. However, this happens to a lot of rides that are heavily reliant on the tech of that time. They fade as time goes on, and this also started an era of bad versions of this.
And there is a ride, well, Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, which I think it's inevitable that we cover one day.
Yes.
That has, I think, tainted the appreciation that I've had for this ride because I don't think it measures up to what the
No,
OG,
Spider-Man's way better. It's
which
an
was done in
incredible ride.
1999. It's fucking insane.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. It's a clear fail for me.
It's a fail. And that leaves this at what? A
4 out of 10. And that's with some 0.5s thrown in there.
A couple 4. Hey, that's I think I enjoy the 0.5.
We had 2.5s. And really, if we're being honest, and we were forced to put guns to our heads and make those actual passes or fails,
It could have easily been a 3 out of 10.
it could have been a 3 out of 10. 4 out of 10 feels generous.
There's a world where it could have gone 2 out of 10.
I think so too.
So hey, we go right in the well, I guess we gave it the curve.
We gave it the curve, sure. And I think that's because it did have like a good first run.
And I will say, and once again, like obviously we've had some issues with this ride, which were clearly presented in the bad section of this podcast. I think a 40% feels fair. I don't think this is an atrociously bad ride. I will still go on it if it's a short wait.
But
there are things about it I still enjoy.
4 out of 10 matches the enthusiasm I have to ride the ride.
Yeah,
for sure.
and I think lower wouldn't have been a accurate.
I don't think it's a bad
representation
ride for what it is. I just
Yeah.
don't enjoy it. It's like
it's an obligation. I really do feel like it's an obligation.
It's like The Lobster. I enjoyed it the first time I watched it. I'm not gonna watch it again. Like that's just kind of how I feel about it.
That's fine.
4 out of 10 did not pass. Not a world-class attraction. Not the world-class pass. That's fine. It's a fine ride. But maybe you disagree with us. If you're a Transformers truther out there, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. But that does it for this episode of For Your Amusement. Thank you guys all for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. And if you're listening, make sure to subscribe and also to rate this podcast 5 stars because it does keep us up and going here, keeps the lights on, keeps us making this podcast. Follow the pod at FYA Pod. You can follow myself at Ryan S. Bergara on Twitter, at Ryan Bergara on Instagram, at Byron A. Marin on all the aforementioned socials. But until then, I guess we'll see you on the next ride.
That's right. Awesome. Let's roll out.
Yeah, let's please.
All right.